Turkeys, written by John O'Hara. Yes, that's right. There was a time when the big crop of turkeys raised in Greene County were driven like cattle to their final doom on a Thanksgiving Day dinner table. But you might as well quit shaking your head in silent dissent if the only highways you've seen have been those which are infested with cars, trucks, and an occasional motorcycle whizzing by all day and all night long. There was a once upon a time when there were no cars or trucks of any sort, and a little later in time when there were only a very, very few of them, and they ran only in the summer. It was in those days that every year at Thanksgiving time, some 5,000 or 6,000 of the slow-moving fowls would be driven slowly and tediously over all of the roads converging on Waynesburg from the outlying farms. There's not many folks still around who remember the colorful scene of thousands of the Thanksgiving Day birds making their slow, hesitating way along the dusty highways and byways. One who does, though, is Irwin A. Irv Tilton, retired Waynesburg florist. The time, he says, was about 1907 through 1910 or 1911. His memories of those days are quite vivid because his father, the late Frank Tilton, was the unofficial broker or dealer who handled most of the county's turkey crop in those days. Yes, sir, Tilton recalled. It was something to see all those birds come clucking along the road, picking their way very deliberately, now and then getting into squalling fights and milling around every water trough they came to. Yes, there were still lots of watering troughs along the road in those days. They would start collecting the birds away back in the southwestern corner of the county near Jollytown and into West Virginia. The flock grew in numbers as it came nearer to Waynesburg, but with only 2 or 3 men driving them at night, they roosted on rail fences on the side of the road. They only moved a few miles in a day. Mostly, Tilton continued, it would be fellows who drove the old-time huckster wagons who also drove the turkeys, with occasional others helping. They finally wound up in a big barn and pen on the end of 2nd Avenue in Waynesburg. Most of them were killed by a fellow named Charlie Rhodes, who had 5 fingers and a thumb on each hand. He would slit their throats as they hung head down on a long wire line, so they would be well bled. 2 other fellows did most of the picking. One of them was named Charlie Yoders, a man from up around West Union, not Charlie Yoders, the stonemason who lived in Waynesburg. The other picker was a fellow by the name of McDonald, Tilton recalled. The 2 men generally picked the birds down to the pin feathers, and then some scalding water used to loosen the feathers was in a big drum heated by a gas fire and kept at just a certain temperature. After they were slaughtered and picked, the birds were packed in ice in big barrels and shipped to Pittsburgh. Some birds were shipped with their heads still on because of that preference by some religious groups, Irwin added, as the old scenes seemed to come alive again in his memories. Most of the turkeys eaten in Greene County were either bought direct from the farmers, most of whom then raised small flocks of the birds every year, or from local meat markets, but none were bought which had been shipped into the county from other producers. At that time, this would have been unheard of.